Have you ever laid awake at night wondering why anything exists at all? Not just why you exist, or why the Earth exists, but why there is a universe in the first place, instead of nothing. That question alone has kept some of the greatest minds in history up at night. And it's actually one of the strongest starting points for thinking clearly about God. Nothing in the universe explains its own existence. Not you, not me, not the sun, not even the laws of physics. Everything we see around us depends on something else to bring it into being. So when you trace that chain of dependence back and back, you eventually hit a wall. Either the chain goes back forever, which most philosophers agree creates more problems than it solves, or there has to be something that doesn't depend on anything else to exist. Something that exists by its own nature. That's not a leap of blind faith. That's just basic logic applied honestly. And that something is what people have called God for thousands of years. Now let's talk about the beginning of the universe itself, because this one is fascinating. For most of human history, people assumed the universe was eternal, that it just always existed. But then science caught up. In the 20th century, a Belgian priest and physicist named Georges Lemaitre proposed what we now call the Big Bang Theory, and later Edwin Hubble's observations backed it up. Space, time, matter, and energy all had a starting point. Even Einstein resisted this idea at first because he didn't like its implications. But the evidence won him over. Here's why this matters. If the universe had a beginning, it needs a cause. Something cannot come from absolutely nothing. No space, no time, no matter, and just pop into existence on its own. Whatever caused the universe has to be outside of space and time itself, because it caused space and time to exist. That means this cause has to be timeless, spaceless, incredibly powerful, and it has to be personal in some sense, because it made a choice to create rather than not create. That description lines up remarkably well with how the Bible describes God from the very first verse. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now here's something that blows a lot of people's minds when they first hear it, and it's called fine-tuning. The universe isn't just here, it's balanced with a precision that's almost impossible to comprehend. Take the force of gravity. If gravity were even slightly stronger or weaker, by a tiny fraction, stars like our sun wouldn't be able to form properly, and life as we know it couldn't exist. Or take the cosmological constant, the value that controls how fast the universe expands. Scientists have calculated that if this number were off by an unimaginably small amount, the universe would have either collapsed back on itself in an instant or expanded so fast that galaxies, stars, and planets never would have formed. We're talking about a level of precision, like hitting a target the size of a single atom from across the entire universe. Physicist Fred Hoyle, who was actually an atheist for most of his life, looked at how perfectly the carbon atom is tuned to allow life to exist, and he said it looked like a super-intellect had monkeyed with physics. That's not a preacher saying that. That's a scientist looking honestly at the data. Let's move to something closer to home, something you experience every single day, your own mind. You reason, you weigh evidence, you just use logic to follow this video. But think about what that actually requires. If your brain is purely the product of random, unguided physical processes, chemicals bumping into chemicals, shaped only by survival instincts, then why would you trust your own thoughts to track truth at all? Evolution, if it's the whole story, only cares about survival, not truth. A belief could help you survive while being completely false, but you don't live that way. You trust logic. You trust math. You trust that 2 + 2 = 4, not because it helped your ancestors escape lions, but because it's actually true. That kind of confidence in reason makes a lot more sense if our minds were designed by a rational mind to actually perceive reality, rather than being an accident that happens to sometimes get things right. Now let's talk about morality, because this is one of the most powerful arguments there is, and it's something everybody feels even if they don't think about it philosophically. Almost every person on Earth agrees that torturing a child for fun is wrong. Not just distasteful, Not just against social convention, but actually, truly wrong. In every culture, in every time period. Where does that come from? If we're just biological machines that evolved by chance, morality is just a useful illusion, a trick our brains play to help groups survive. But that's not how anyone actually lives. When someone wrongs you, you don't just feel inconvenienced, you feel that a real moral line was crossed. C.S. Lewis, who was a committed atheist for years before changing his mind, said that his very argument against God, that the universe seemed unjust, fell apart when he realized that he only had a sense of justice because there was a real standard of justice out there to measure it against. A ruler only makes sense if there's a straight line somewhere to compare it to. Objective moral values point to an objective moral lawgiver. Let's shift to history now, because Christianity actually makes historical claims that can be examined like any other historical event. The resurrection of Jesus is one of the most scrutinized events in ancient history. Here's what almost all historians, even skeptical ones, agree on. Jesus was a real person who was crucified under Pontius Pilate. His followers sincerely believed they saw him alive afterward. This belief transformed cowardly, scared disciples into people willing to be beaten, imprisoned, and killed rather than deny what they saw. People will die for what they believe is true, but it's incredibly rare for people to die for something they know is a lie. These weren't people spreading a rumor they heard secondhand. They claimed to be eyewitnesses. The tomb was empty, acknowledged even by the earliest opponents of Christianity, who tried to explain it away rather than simply pointing to a body. And skeptics like Paul, who was actively persecuting Christians, and James, the skeptical brother of Jesus, both dramatically changed their lives after claiming to encounter the risen Jesus. That kind of transformation demands an explanation. Then there's the reliability of the Bible itself. We have more manuscript copies of the New Testament, over 5,000 Greek manuscripts alone, than any other ancient document, by an enormous margin. Compare that to other ancient texts we consider historically reliable, like the works of Julius Caesar or Homer, which survive in a few hundred copies at most, some with gaps of 1,000 years between the event and the earliest copy. The New Testament manuscripts date remarkably close to the events themselves, some fragments within decades. If we trust ancient history at all, the evidence for the New Testament is actually stronger than the evidence we accept for other events nobody questions. Finally, think about the sheer scale of human experience across history and cultures. Billions of people across thousands of years, from Roman philosophers to modern scientists, from illiterate farmers to Ivy League professors, have reported a sense of connection with something beyond the material world. That doesn't prove anything on its own, but it's worth noticing that this desire, this ache for meaning beyond ourselves, shows up everywhere humans exist. As Lewis pointed out, we don't have desires like hunger without food existing, or thirst without water existing. Maybe the deep longing for something eternal points to the fact that eternity is real. Put all of this together, the beginning of the universe, its impossible fine-tuning, the reality of objective morality, and the historical evidence surrounding Jesus, and you get a case that isn't built on blind faith at all. It's built on looking honestly at the evidence in front of us and following it wherever it leads.